Hello everyone. Today we continue our discussion on the robotics industry. Recently, the world's attention was focused on Kalu. That's right, the US and China just completed a new round of summit-level trade negotiations. The outcome was less of a reconciliation and more of a truce. As everyone saw, China went to these negotiations with leverage. With its superior supply chain advantages, China proactively played the rare earth card, forcing the US, which had launched a fierce tariff war, to return to the negotiating table and accept certain conditions in exchange for a calm presented to the world. According to the Quinlan Agreement, both sides agreed to suspend some excessive measures. For example, China agreed to suspend the retaliatory tariffs imposed on the US since November, and most importantly, temporarily suspended strict controls on rare earth exports. In exchange, the U.S. agreed to extend the exemption period for some Chinese goods under Section 301 tariffs and suspend the imposition of new port fees on Chinese ships. Of course, there were also symbolic acts. China agreed to resume purchasing at least 12 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans in the last 2 months of 2025. The die is cast, but many are discussing whether China's move to play the rare earth card at this time was too hasty. Is it like using a cannon to kill a mosquito when the opponent has only played 1 against 3? Actually, it depends on your perspective. First, the power of this trump card is real. When China announced export controls on rare earth-related projects, especially processing technology and equipment, in early 2025, the global reaction was panic. This is reminiscent of the rare earth embargo of 2010, when rare earth prices soared by 1,000% within a year. The supply chains that the U.S. Department of Defense and the Department of Energy heavily relied on were instantly strangled. Therefore, the U.S. had to negotiate. But the key point is this trump card has an expiration date. Rare earth technology is not some magical invention from scratch. It's simply a complex, highly polluting industrial process. Western countries have already woken up to this reality and are investing heavily in restructuring their supply chains. Look at companies like EMPA Materials in the US and Neo Performance Materials in Estonia. Both have new factories starting operations by 2025. Other projects in South Korea, Vietnam, and Germany are also accelerating. The industry consensus is that it will take the West about 10 to 15 years to achieve meaningful independence in its rare earth supply chain. However, given the current determination and pace of the West rare earth supply chain reconstruction, breaking China's absolute monopoly, that is, making this trump card no longer a trump card, may only take 3 to 5 years. Therefore, with China's trump card still at its peak, but gradually weakening, using it now to give the other side a real shock, forcing them to return to reality and admit that you can win unilaterally may actually be the most rational choice. As the old saying goes, a single punch can prevent 100 more. Although this move will cause rare earth consumers to lose all illusions about a stable supply from China. So, conversely, why is the US willing to accept this truce? What's the point of such a long tariff war for the US? It's meaningful, of course, as analyzed in an in-depth report titled The Trap China Set for the US. Tariffs are never just about money. The real purpose of tariffs is to buy time. It's about buying time for the recovery of US manufacturing. The real question then arises, can the US use the time gained from the tariff war to successfully bring manufacturing back to the US? We know that in any manufacturing sector, as long as China is involved, its high cost-effective labor and its incredibly cheap, complete, and efficient supply chain leave other competitors with virtually no chance to answer the question of US manufacturing. Let's take a broad example. A very classic one, the Apple iPhone. This example helps us reveal the true and deeper purpose of Trump tariff policy. Let us make a simple assumption. Let us say an Apple iPhone's final price in the US is $1,000. Let's look at scenario 1, which is the current model made in China. After this phone is manufactured in China and shipped to the US, let's assume the price, excluding tariffs, is $700. Of the $700, Apple makes a profit of $100. Therefore, Apple's total cost in manufacturing and the supply chain is $600. How is this $600 cost structured? Let us break it down. Assume the labor cost of Chinese workers across all stages of the supply chain totals $100. The costs of various materials, components, and logistics, excluding lay, total $400, and the profits of other companies, large and small, in the supply chain add up to $100. Okay, remember this number. Apple spends $600 in costs and makes a $100 profit, but now the US government says, this is made in China, no way, I am adding tariffs. How much? Let's say $300. Therefore, the $700 factory price plus the $300 tariff results in a final price of exactly $1,000 in US stores. This is scenario 1. Now let's look at scenario 2. What if this phone were entirely manufactured in the United States? To maintain competitiveness, let's assume its final retail price is also $1,000. But because it's manufactured in the US, tariffs are zero. However, its cost structure would be completely different. First, the labor cost for American workers would be $100. Let's assume it as a total of $300. Second, rebuilding a supply chain in the US, including materials, components, and logistics costs, wouldn't be $400. Let us say it would be $500. Let us say the profit for other American companies in the supply chain is $100. So, what about Apple? To maintain the $1,000 price, it can only earn $100. Now do the math. What is the factory price of this phone if it's semi-manufactured in the US? It is $300 for labor, $500 for costs, $100 for supply chain profit, plus Apple's own $100 profit. Wait, Apple's profit is added last. Its factory cost is $300. Laiclaw plus $500. Materia plus $100. Supply chain prot totaling $900. Do you understand now? Scenario 1, made in China. The US government collects $300 in tariffs. Scenario 2, made in America. The US government doesn't receive tariffs, but American workers receive $300 in wages. Although the data in this example is fictional, it reveals the true scheme of tariff policy. It attempts to forcibly close the cost gap between Chinese and American manufacturing through tariffs. Its purpose has never been the $300 in taxes. Its purpose is to convert that $300 in tariff revenue into $300 in American worker wages, thereby achieving industrial repatriation and regaining control of the real economy and supply chain. Doesn't this plan sound perfect? But the problem is, this scenario has two huge walls it simply cannot overcome. The first wall is Wall Street. Look at that example again. Made in China, Apple's cost is $600. Made in the USA, Apple's cost is $900. While in both scenarios, Apple's profit is both $100 for Wall Street. These are two completely different things. In the former, with a cost of $600 and a profit of $100, the profit margin is 16.7%. In the latter, with a cost of $900 and a profit of $100, the profit margin is only 11.1%. Guess how Wall Street analysts will write their reports? They will immediately downgrade Apple's stock rating. Analysts at Bank of America have already calculated this. They believe that even just moving the final assembly stage to the US would increase the cost of an iPhone by 25%. If components are included, with tariffs added, the cost increase could reach as high as 90%. A $1,200 iPhone might sell for $2,300. What does this mean? It means that true industrial repatriation for asset prices is deflationary, not inflationary, because it will compress corporate profits and lower stock prices. When Apple's stock price plummets, it will drag down the entire S&P 500 index. Who holds the S&P 500? It's the American Retirement Accounts, the 401(k)s, the whole retirement industrial complex. The American baby boomer generation doesn't taunt to hear things like, for the great rejuvenation of the nation, except the Gnostic falling to 10,000 points. They just want their portfolios to grow forever. This creates a real civil war within American society. Not South versus North, but the tech coast versus the Rust Belt. Wall Street and stockholding pension funds are the first and most formidable wall hindering the return of manufacturing. Politicians dare not touch it. They can only pretend to have both a strong market and a reconstructed Rust Belt. In the words of the research report, that S not policy, that S astrology, if the first wall is the obstacle of capital, then the second wall is the obstacle of people, as the saying goes. It's hard to go from luxury to frugality. For decades, globalization and financialization have accustomed Americans, especially the laptop class, to making money off financial bubbles or living off subsidies. Now, if you ask them to go back to the factory and tighten screw, they'll show their discontent with their votes. This isn't just a cultural feeling, it's a cold, hard fact. We have two prime examples happening right now. The first is the Foxconn project in Wisconsin. In 2017, under Trump's personal supervision, Foxconn announced a $10 billion investment to build a state-of-the-art LCD panel factory, promising 13,000 manufacturing jobs. It was hailed as a benchmark for manufacturing resurgence. And the result, today in 2025, the project has proven to be a complete failure. The local government spent huge sums leveling the land and demolishing houses, but the promised factory and jobs are nowhere to be seen. Guess who bought that land now? Microsoft. In 2024, Microsoft announced a $3.3 billion investment to build a giant data center in that promised land of manufacturing. The second is the TSMC project in Arizona. If Foxconn was merely a vanity project, then TSMC was the substance project, the lifeline of the U.S. chip supply chain security. The U.S. government poured astronomical subsidies into it. And the result? By October 2025, the project was plagued by severe delays and huge cost overruns. Why money wasn't the problem. The biggest problem was people. The project was delayed as early as 2023, citing a lack of sufficient skilled construction workers. TSMC ultimately had no choice but to urgently airlift hundreds of technicians from Taiwan to train American workers on site. This detail is almost darkly humorous. If you can even find enough skilled workers to build a factory, where are you going to find tens of thousands of industrial workers like those in Taiwan willing to work 24/7 in 3 shifts to operate the factory? This isn't a cyclical problem, it's a structural labor shortage. A report from the Institute for Manufacturing Research shows that by 2033, the U.S. manufacturing sector will face a labor shortage of 1.9 million workers. The construction industry alone will need to attract an additional 439,000 new workers by 2025. Paradoxically, the average annual salary, including benefits in manufacturing, has exceeded $102,000. Yet the labor force participation rate continues to decline. Polls reveal a huge contradiction. Americans are emotionally very supportive of Made in America, but physically extremely resistant to going to work in factories. What will people do when the old social contract, I work hard and I can earn a decent middle-class life and a pension, breaks? What will they do when they find that the manufacturing resurgence promised by politicians has repeatedly turned into a pipe dream? Like Foxconn and TSMC, they want to go back to the factory. They will use their votes to push an outsider onto the throne of an insider, just like what happened in New York City in November 2025. New York is the heart of America's financialized casino. Yet here, 34-year-old Zoran Mamdani, an immigrant from Uganda, a South Asian Muslim, and a democratic socialist, defeated all the establishment heavyweights to be elected mayor of New York City. This election result is the ultimate political expression of the difficulty of transitioning from luxury to frugality in American society. Mamdani's election was not to send people back to factories to hack screws. He was propelled to the mayoral seat by desperate New Yorkers, left behind by finance and technology. His campaign promises included free childcare, rent freeze, housing for the homeless, and taxing the rich. When a country cannot rebuild its industry through a hard restart and instead continues down the path of drifting along, the time gained through tariff policies will be wasted, ultimately triggering a status quo out systemic collapse, followed by political rage, wealth redistribution, and the use of universal basic income to appease the mob. Mamdani's election was a prelude to this ending. So you see, America is trapped. The first wall to industrial repatriation is Wall Street, Capital One to allow it. And the second wall is the American people themselves, Labor One to allow it. This seems like an unsolvable dead end. God seems to have truly stopped protecting America. But what if this script had a twist? What if there was a way to bring all manufacturing back to America without squeezing Wall Street's profits or requiring American workers to go back to factories? To tighten screws? Yes, you might have guessed it. This is the deus ex machina of this grand drama. What if industrial repatriation no longer requires people at all? Elon Musk enters the scene. While everyone is still grappling with labor shortages, unions, and costs, Musk, at the 2025 shareholder meeting, once again brought his humanoid robot, Optimus, to the forefront. Musk's robot is the ultimate solution that attempts to simultaneously dismantle two walls. Let's see how it does it. First, it broke down Wall Street profit wall. What did Wall Street fear? High labor costs squeezing Apple's profit margins. An American manufacturing worker earns $102,000 a year and still needs pensions and health insurance. But a robot, it's not a cost it. It's a capital good. Goldman Sachs, in its latest 2025 report, significantly revised its forecasts. They found that the manufacturing cost of humanoid robots is falling faster than anyone expected. In just 1 year, costs dropped by 40% from the $50,000 to $250,000 range to $30,000 to $150,000. Musk's goal is to bring the price down to $20,000 to $30,000. Do the math at $30,000 robot can work 24/7 without overtime pay, pension contributions, strikes, or rent freezes? It caused Apple's manufacturing costs not to rise, but to fall epically. Profit margins are no longer an issue. Wall Street's wall has crumbled. Pension accounts are safe. Second, it solved the labor wall. The US is short 1.9 million industrial workers, right? No problem. In his latest timeline for 2025, Musk said he expects thousands of Optimus Prime robots to be working in Tesla's own factories by the end of this year, 2025. His goal is to produce 1 million robots annually by 2030. As for the more exaggerated and widely circulated figure of 320 million by 2030, let us set aside whether it's realistic. The key point is that when robots can be mass-produced, you no longer need those 1.9 million workers unwilling to work in factories. You've abolished the problem. The labor wall has fallen. This is the only script for the revival of American manufacturing. It's no longer a revival of the Rust Belt, but the arrival of a robot revolution. Wall Street preserved its valuations, and manufacturing is back in its own hands. God, it seems, has truly blessed America, again in a way no one expected. But this is a dramatic script, has an even more dramatic ending. We just celebrated that the US has solved its labor shortage problem. But we forgot to ask, is this solution supplementing the workforce with machines, or ELIDA replacing the workforce with machines? If robots are truly 5 times more productive than humans, as Musk predicts, and can work 24 divided by 7, then what we just solved was a labor shortage problem. We fight up tout day upon human workforce fight completely. The factories are back. But those 19,000, 1.9 million, or even 190 million Americans are still unemployed. This is the most unimaginable ultimate twist in this script, and this twist isn't something I predicted. It's what those who are creating these bottle robot revolutions have told us themselves. In an interview in November 2025, Musk himself bluntly declared that Optimus Prime will eliminate poverty. It will usher in an era of universally high incomes. He even said in another interview, capitalism implementation of artificial intelligence and robots, assuming it's on the right track, in reality. It instead leads to a communist utopia. You heard right. In Silicon Valley, UBEAN, or universal basic income, has transformed from a left-wing social welfare concept into a buzzword among tech leaders, because they understand better than anyone that when artificial intelligence and robots replace hundreds of millions of jobs from factories to offices, if society doesn't to undergo a complete redistribution of wealth, if the money earned by AI isn't used to support those who are idle, the entire social structure will immediately collapse. This is the ultimate irony. To escape the trap of state investment and overcapacity set by China, the United States, or Western capitalism, unleashed its most powerful weapon, the purest, most ruthless capitalist innovation, represented by Musk. This innovation ultimately reached its extreme. It created sustainable wealth, but also destroyed the last remaining value of human beings. As a factor of production, therefore, to prevent this system from self-destructing the United States, the beacon of capitalism will be forced to adopt a distribution system closest to communism, universal basic income, in order to defeat what it sees as communism. The United States ultimately, unexpected, achieved communism through technology. Is this the script God wrote for America? If people are idle and don't know why they live, are they still human in the fullest sense? Do humans still have a reason to exist? It's unimaginable. The above content is for informational purposes only and is not investment advice. Thank you for your attention and support.